Hello, everyone. As you're coming in, I see people starting to trickle in. If you want to go ahead and find the chat box and share with us where you're coming from, where you're joining from, we'd love to hear. And we'll get started in just a couple minutes. We have Los Angeles and Orlando, Cincinnati, Chicago, Florida, another Chicago. Virginia.
Wonderful.
Lots of California. Sue's from Denver, Idaho. A couple more, Ohio and Orlando.
Wow, from Alaska.
Alaska. Woohoo.
So exciting to see how far the reach is.
And a totally different time of day right now in Alaska.
Oh.
It's lunch. I'm guessing you're just starting your day.
Kansas, Michigan. Great to see all these observers on today, or those that partake in the observer role.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
Michigan with excitement.
Hopefully you can't hear those church bells in the background. The window's buttoned up, but they do get loud.
If you're just coming in, feel free to find that chat box. People are sharing where they're joining us from, and we'll start in just a moment. More Chicago, Southern California.
Florida, send some sunshine this way. It's a very gloomy fall day in Chicago.
Hi, Charmaine. I see your shout out.
Oh, how nice. A friend.
Yes.
All right, well, everyone's chatting in where they're from. I just want to go over a couple housekeeping things and we'll really get started. So today, our webinar is 5 ways to use myTeachstone to make observations easier than ever. And we will be recording this, and so don't worry, you don't need to take notes, take screenshots. It'll be sent out as a recording tomorrow. You'll also get access to the slides and any resources that we mention, and we will try to share lots of things that will be helpful for you moving forward. And most of you, it looks like, have found that chat box, but if throughout the time you have things you want to share, or we'll be putting up some polls. If there's something you want to chat in to your poll answer instead, feel free to do that. We'll be monitoring that chat. And we'll also make sure there's time for Q&A and to answer the questions you have. And so you'll notice there's also a separate section that says Q&A. And so if you have a question you're hoping Nikki or Kim will answer, feel free to find that Q&A box, and we'll get through those questions. All right, well, I'm gonna hand it over to the real experts here today. I have Nikki and Kim. Kim, do you want to introduce yourself?
I will, and I'll let you put up that poll for us, Liz. Thank you so much. My name is Kim Pold, and I am the Client Success Manager in the Midwest. And my partner in crime today is?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nikki Crosdale, and I'm the Client Success Manager in the Northeast.
We're so delighted to have you with us today. As you can see, Liz is putting up a poll. We just want to get a pulse check to see how everyone's feeling today. I know it's a Monday, and depending maybe on the weather and how your weekend went, you'll interpret that here in this poll. But looks like we've got quite a few of you in the pretty good to great range. I love that. I think if I was in the poll, I would probably say pretty good. A little more sunshine.
Me too, Kim.
Yeah, you too.
Yes,
good.
It's a Monday after all.
That's right. And hanging in there. I love that. Nothing like transparency. There are many days when all of us, especially now, with all the things that we're facing, hanging in there is just perfectly fine. So, all right. So Liz, do we have everything in? We're gonna share those results.
They were just up. So we were at 56% with pretty good. And
perfect.
only 12 down there at hanging in there.
Okay. All right. Well, then we're going to jump right in and get started. And thank you again for joining us. We're going to, Liz, can you close that poll? Actually, I can. Perfect. So let's jump right into the agenda today. We are very excited to bring to you 5 new myTeachstone features that are going to help you during your observation to capture that data that you so desperately want to during an observation. We're going to first show them to you in sort of a screenshot through our slide deck, and then we're going to demonstrate those for you live in myTeachstone in the platform. And then we're going to share some helpful supports for the class observers, and we'll wrap up with a little bit of Q&A. So make sure that you're putting in those questions that you might have. We're going to make an assumption today that our audience perhaps is filled with class observers, those that are really kind of entrenched in the work of observing and coding. But for those of you that may not be a class observer, I certainly think that watching this is going to help you have a better understanding of class. And as long as you walk away with a nugget or two, a new nugget or two, I always think that's a successful way to spend some time. So I hope that you'll enjoy this. So let's get started, Nikki, on our very first new feature, which we're excited to bring to you regarding custom questions that set that environment.
Yes, let's jump right in. So just like when you're telling a story, it's helpful to set the scene. Same thing for when you are communicating class observation data, it's helpful to set the environment. So this is a new feature that administrators of a myTeachstone account can turn on. So it's totally customizable, optional. You can turn it off and on. And they can select specific custom questions that they would like the observer to answer that will serve the goal of helping to set the environment of the observation. So you'll see in this example, we've chosen this sort of fake administrator chose what song was sung, what story was read. These are particularly helpful for early childhood settings. Typically in most 2-hour observation blocks, you'll hear a song, you'll hear a story. If you are doing observations in upper age levels, you might choose something like what lesson was shared or what activity was done. Really anything that's applicable and relevant to your organization. But it's just an additional data point for the observer to capture here. And really the goal is that it helps to trigger the teacher's memory and really kind of bring her back to that day in the classroom. She can say, yes, I remember that day that we sung that song or read that story. And it helps to just give context to the data that she's receiving and help her understand it even that much better. And it also provides that same context for anybody else that's viewing this data, for administrators, coaches, and any other stakeholders as well.
Thanks, Nikki. This is such a great feature because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty certain that the day of a teacher is quite busy. And so by the time they might sit down and do a debrief, maybe they've forgotten the context of this particular observation. So I think that can be really helpful. And I do want to point everyone's direction down to where it says that this feature must be turned on. And you'll see that on many of the slides today. And what we mean by that is that these are all new features that are, very much autonomous to the program or the agency. So if you are thinking, well, I'm not sure if my admin has this feature or has turned it on, that's something that you'll want to talk about with the admin prior to the observation, because these are all features that can be turned on or off. Okay. So Nikki, let's go right into our next feature. I know one of your favorites.
Yes, these are all great. This one is one of my favorites. It's the indicator level data capture. So best practice when coding is to assign what we sometimes call a soft score or a range, low, mid, or high, to each indicator within the dimension. And it's this data that helps inform the numerical score for the dimension overall. And so lots of times an observer will capture this data on their score sheet, which is great. And now you have the ability within myTeachstone to capture the data right through the platform. So you can see here with these screenshots, this would occur when you're creating a formal observation. You go down your list of dimensions and you're selecting the scores as you always would, but now there's a new button that says enter indicators and notes, and it'll take you to that second screenshot where you'll be provided with a list of indicators and you can select low, medium, or high for each one of those. So this is just a great, another available data point to share back about the observation. It also helps to back up your score, so it really provides more information and more explanation behind that numerical code.
Nikki, this feature was not prevalent prior to this newest release, correct? What was here for the observer before?
Right, so here before, you were really just selecting a number for each dimension, and then you had space to record notes. So some people like to record notes on their paper score sheets, some like to transcribe those notes right into the platform. So there was really just kind of those two data pieces for each dimension, the score and the notes. So now this is that third piece where you can, input those indicator ranges as well.
Perfect. And the second part to this indicator level data capture is?
Yeah, so this is where after you have completed your observation, you've input all the data, all of the indicators, ranges across all the cycles, you can go to your review page for the observation and you can see this nicely compiled data table that just gives you that snapshot of all the ranges that you selected across the indicators across all the cycles. So this is a good sort of review point for you to kind of look back, make sure everything is as it should be. And then it's also a good snapshot that administrators and coaches have access to and may even share back with teachers to give them this, paint the picture of the observation. And I would highlight too that when a teacher is looking at this data, it's really helpful in that she can pinpoint where she's seeing certain categories of interactions that are happening with really good consistency, and then certain categories of interactions that may need a little bit more focus. So for example, with this, you can see effective facilitation and student interest. I see a lot of highs there. So those are areas that are really strong. Those are happening consistently in the classroom, whereas clarity of learning objectives, there's some mids and a low there. So you can say, that's an area that maybe the teacher wants to learn more about or focus a little bit more on in terms of improving the interactions in that area.
I love this, Nikki. I'm a visual person. I imagine there might be some out there as well, some of you that are visual. So what a great way for me as a teacher to kind of see that holistic summary really quick at a glance. Thank you.
Kim and Nikki, before we move on, there's a couple of good questions that have come through the chat. I think some maybe sort of higher level questions, more just about myTeachstone, and then I'm wondering if we want to take a moment to tackle those.
Certainly. What can you?
Yeah, so Leah asked, where would these online forms be found?
So these are all within the myTeachstone platform in the observation data and management module.
And these aren't really forms, these are really part of the platform themselves.
Yes.
Right. And we also have a question about the cost. Gonna address that?
That's part of your myTeachstone subscription, which we can talk about. We would love to actually talk to you about that, perhaps offline or in a call that we could have afterwards, so we can learn more about your program, your agency, and the needs, and then we can talk about that pricing.
Yeah, but these new features there's no additional cost.
That's right, of course.
And then Melinda is wondering, is the dimension description available to see as well, since the numerical codes can be created by a variety of ranges?
Yeah, so it's not within the myTeachstone platform, but it's going to be, as an observer, you're always going to have your class manual handy whenever you're conducting an observation and inputting your scores. So your class manual is going to have all that great information around, defining the dimensions, defining the ranges to help you really select the most accurate and fair scores.
Thanks for that reminder, Nikki. I know that I like to have my manual right in front of me, and I do a little quick review before I go into an observation because I think I just need that little refresher. So thanks for that reminder. Yeah. Okay, Liz, I think we'll move forward. That's okay. All right, we're going to go to our next feature, which I hate to say again is one of Nikki's favorite, but it's also one of mine. I love the double coding feature here because we've never really been able to do that before within the platform. So I'll let Nikki explain that to you.
Yes, so I'll just take one step back just to kind of talk about what double coding is, just in case there are some of you on that aren't as familiar with that. So double coding is when two observers code alongside one another in a classroom or code the same videotape footage of a classroom. So basically you're collecting two sets of scores for one observation, and it serves a couple of different purposes. One is it's a good data quality check. So lots of organizations will decide to double code a certain percentage of the observations they're conducting, maybe 10%, just to make sure that they are, their validity and their reliability is up to snuff. And the other main goal of double coding is that it provides a great professional development experience for the observer. So they're able to code alongside of their peer and engage in a meaningful debriefing discussion afterwards where they're comparing their scores and really just learning from one another. So this is something that's been happening, since the inception of class scoring, but now you can actually capture this double coding data within the platform. So you can assign two observers to the same observation. You can collect these two sets of scores, and then the system automatically compares the codes, highlights for you where you might have cycles where the two coders were in disagreement, and then also auto-calculates the overall inter-rater reliability, which is the agreement of the two coders.
So is that why I see the red circle there, or oval, whatever that, I see that there, could you explain that, what that is?
Yeah, so we're highlighting here that in this fake example, these two coders were actually in pretty good agreement overall, 98%. But one dimension ILF, they had one cycle where they were not scoring within 1 point of one another. So we just highlighted that to show that, the system is kind of calling that out. And so those two observers can really hone in on that one particular area, especially during their debriefing session, to really make sure that they understand where they were off from one another and grow their understanding.
That's great. I love that there's this opportunity for the observer to have that professional development and that growth opportunity. So, and it's so easy now, right? This used to be able to be done paper pencil, but now we have it in the system. So really great feature. All right. So we're going to move on to our next new feature, the domain summary notes. Nikki?
Yes, so Teachstone has worked to create more flexibility and more customization in terms of the summary notes and feedback that are captured for an observation. So this again is this is a feature that the administrator of the account needs to turn on. And they have several choices. So the first choice that they might choose is domain summary notes. So the domain, just as a reminder, is those overarching categories of interactions within each age level of the tool. And so the observer may turn on the domain level notes. The administrator may turn on the domain level notes and prompt the observer to fill in specific categories of notes within each domain. And those are, again, totally customizable by the admin. So here they've chosen dimension of strength and dimension of growth. They could choose any category they want here that they want captured, but they've chosen those two. And so the observer has gone in and selected a dimension of strength within that domain, as well as a dimension of growth within that domain. And they provided specific individualized notes and examples of things that they saw and heard during the observation that help support those strengths and those growth areas. So this feature really just helps to provide more structure around the notes and feedback that are provided. So instead of just kind of one big general bucket of observation notes, you can really set these clear structured categories if you want them captured in this example by domain, so that the information is just even that much more digestible and helpful for the recipient.
I love that, even without communicating, the admin and the observer are communicating by these selections that they're making and including these features. So let's see about the what's going on with our dimension summary notes.
Yeah, so this is a second option. So the administrator may choose to turn on dimension summary notes. So just like the domain is kind of that top bucket, that overarching category of interaction, the dimension is a category of interaction within each domain. So you're kind of drilling down to a more specific, to the next level. And in this case, the administrator has chosen to turn on the dimension summary notes, and the observer then, and again, they've chosen strengths and growth areas, but they could choose any categories. And the observer has entered in, again, specific examples and notes about what they saw during the observation that help support those categories of strength and growth areas.
I really think that this is dynamite for teachers as we think about wanting to really get, dig in to where can I improve with my interactions. And I love that we can, really look at the strengths and growth areas and get into the dimensions. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And one really interesting feature that I just am so excited to share and have Nikki share is the automation of these dimension summary notes. So Nikki, tell us about that.
Yep, so this is our kind of third option for this feature. The administrator may decide to turn on the automated summary notes. So in this case, if you think back to one of our earlier features, the indicator data capture, where you were selecting low, mid, high for each indicator of each domain, it's actually that data that helps inform this automated feedback. And so in this case, we have an example that's teacher sensitivity at the toddler level. So you can see that first couple of sentences there is based off of the score for the dimension. So it was a score in the mid-range. So you can see it's a couple sentences that just explain what a classroom might look like at the mid-range for that dimension, generally speaking. And then there's a list of each of the indicators. And again, those are informed by the ranges that the observer input. And it's just a description for each of those indicators about how the classroom might have looked, in terms of those categories of interactions.
So to be clear, it would be really important for me as an observer to pay close attention to those indicators that I am recording, because that is going to inform this automated system. Would that be correct?
Yes, for sure. So this just helps you to see, even though there's not really much work here for the observer because this is automated, it just helps you to see that this is, if this is turned on, this is something that will be populated into the classroom report. And you as the observer, it's super important, like Kim said, for you to make sure that those indicator ranges are accurate and represent the classroom well, so that this feedback can be populated the best that it can be. And I would say too that just in terms of if you're thinking about which of these, there's lots of different options, which of these summary notes might you turn on? For this third one, I think this could be helpful if the administrator is looking to have language that's more standard or maybe even class official in the report. And it also creates workflow efficiencies too, because it is less of a lift on the part of the observer or anybody that needs to review observation data before it gets finalized.
Sure, like on a large scale, I could see that. So great uses for that. And again, the feature must be turned on. So it's a good conversation to have with the admin before you would start your, entry into the observation.
Yes.
Right. And our final feature before we go out live and show a few of these, Nikki?
Alrighty, so the classroom observation report, what we like to call the fruits of your labor. It's really an accumulation of everything we've talked about so far. Everything that the observer inputs in terms of data is all going to be compiled into this lovely classroom observation report. So before we've had, earlier iterations of classroom observation reports in the system, but this one is just so new and improved. It's really polished and formal looking, ready to share with administrators, coaches, teachers, any other stakeholders that need the data. And we'll kind of walk you through this report in a second here, but you'll see that there are pages up front that provide background around what is class to kind of set the stage for the data that's coming, and the context around the observation, how the data was captured, and then of course the data itself really presented in easily digestible, visually appealing graphics. And then the piece that we just talked about, the summary notes and feedback, in whatever way the observer captured those, they'll be presented here in the report as well.
So I'm just wondering how often the observers really do look at the fruits of their labor and go in and take a look at this beautiful report that they really have helped to create. And if you want to comment on that in the chat box at all, that would be great. As we transition over, Nikki's going to go ahead now. I'm going to stop sharing, and she's going to take us out live, and we're going to go through these features now live on the platform. So Nikki, I've stopped sharing.
All righty. Okay.
So we're going to start with our custom questions, correct, Nikki?
Yes. Okay. So as you can see here, I'm in the myTeachstone platform. I'm actually in the demo environment, but it should look very similar to what you're used to seeing when you log in. So you would go here to create the observation, create the formal observation, and then you're going to enter in this data at the top here. That's so important. Just going to choose some things to get us going.
Oh, are you choosing double coding? That's great.
Yep. So we can see that feature later. And here we go. So here are custom questions to set the environment. They're right here on this first page. And so if your administrator has not turned this on, you won't see this here. If they have turned it on, you'll see whatever questions they've selected.
Perfect.
Yep. So we'll just go in here, fill out our data. All right, and then we'll start the observation. So now we're going to look at our second feature, which is the indicator level data capture.
Yep.
So here we would enter our typical cycle details, number of adults and children, content and format types, all that good stuff. And then when you come down here to enter your scores, you'll select a score, and then you'll hit enter indicators and notes. That'll take you to this screen where you see all the indicators broken down, and you can select low, medium, or high for each one. So I'll do that. And then here's where we talked about you may want to transcribe your notes from the observation. That's totally optional there. And then you can save it and return to the observation. And then you would just go ahead and do that for each dimensions. We'll just plug in scores here just so we can have something to look at. Of course, you would enter your indicators for each one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll save and add your next cycle and continue to fill out until you've completed all the cycles of your observation.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And then the next feature is our double coding data. So if we go to, let's pretend we've entered all of our data for all of our cycles and we're going to review. So we go to our review summary. And then right up here at the top is kind of your score table. So if this wasn't a double coded observation, you would just see one set of scores here. Since it is a double coded observation, you can see that there's room for primary scores, secondary scores. We haven't input anything, but those would be listed out right here. And then the inter-rater reliability tab would, just like we showed you on the PowerPoint, it would calculate that data automatically for you.
Okay.
Then, depending on what feature is turned on here, over here to the left-hand side of the screen, you might see domain summary notes, dimension summary notes, or none, depends on what's been turned on. But here we have both of those turned on. So if we go into domain summary notes, we can see that you can toggle between the different domains. So we're in a pre-K observation, so we've got our 3 domains here. We've got the custom fields that the administrator has chosen, strengths and areas for growth. So we would type our notes in here.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. As an observer, it really is helping me focus and really know what I need to hone in on and what feedback I need to give.
Yeah, it really sets good expectations here. And then dimension summary notes, if those are turned on, this page looks very similar, but you just have more categories here, so more dimensions to fill out. And then again, you have your custom categories, strengths, and areas for growth. In this case, were chosen where you would type your notes.
Perfect.
And that's that.
Very simple. I love that. That's what we want, right? Make the concept simple.
Absolutely, yes. All about the user experience. Okay, so then the fifth feature we're going to show you, as promised, the report. So we have two versions of the report that we wanted to show you. So first, this is one that has domain summary notes that were entered by the observer. So as you can see, that's the cover page. We've got our what is class section with a nice graphic of the tool, and it would change depending on the age level. We've got the methods used to obtain the data. So how many cycles, for how long, what was observed, just kind of the formula for calculating composite scores for those domains.
Very descriptive. I love that. Oh, look at these beautiful visuals.
Yes, then we see the actual observation data. So there's a graph of the domain scores and the dimension scores. Then there's a table of all the scores across the cycles with their averages. And then the notes. So this is an example of the administrators turned on the domain summary notes, and the observer has captured these strengths and growths for each one of these domains. So that's that. And then the second report we wanted to show you is very similar, but in this case, the administrator turned on the automated feedback.
Oh,
so these
good.
first pages are all going to be similar. And we just entered in one cycle just so we could show you a sample here. But here you'll see actually the custom questions were turned on in this one to set the environment. So those are going to pop up right here under About Observation. And then when you get to the observation feedback, you'll see that this is the automated feedback that's plugged in for each dimension.
Love that.
Yeah.
So similar report, but it's just going to have those slight variations depending on whether the features have been turned on or off.
Right.
Perfect. We have a question that came in, Nikki, and from Alicia. And she says, I've used the report before, but don't remember setting the lines and the graphs for goal and average. Are those on all of the time, or is that a feature that can be turned on? And where does the average come from on those bar graphs?
Yeah, that's another feature that can be turned on. So the administrator of the account would enter in those goal or average scores that they want to have displayed as those bars on the graphs. Yes.
Okay. And then we have another question. Will you please share the overall, and it popped up, what the overall time commitment to these new additions will take outside of the 2-hour observation, or is this done during the 10-minute scoring time within the 4-segment of observation? I think they're wondering, is this going to lengthen or take extra time?
That's a really good question. I think that, like Kim said, we're striving to make the complex simple here. So the idea is that this won't add too much time to your plate as an observer, and that these are all just kind of things that were already being done or captured in other places that we're just providing you a place to capture via the platform. I don't know if you'd add anything else to that, Kim, but.
No, I think you're right. I do think that, so, you know, we become ingenious when we're wanting to save time. I actually think these new features help an observer focus more on, because there's so much going on and so much you want to capture, and we know that we always can't capture all of it, but what are our focus areas? So again, having the, understanding, are these features turned on, and what are the outcomes expected from the administrator, that will be really helpful. And then Margaret asks, so do you give out indicator level details for each cycle? I've always considered individual indicators within individual cycles to not be valid enough to stand on their own.
So you would be capturing however many cycles you normally would capture. And so you'd have that indicator level data across the observation. So when we're thinking about, in particular, the automated feedback that's populated based on exactly what the observer has input for those indicator ranges. It's looking across the whole observation, not just a single cycle.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that you're here to answer some of those more in-depth questions, because we know that you were an observer. So I think we have a poll before we go into our next part of our slideshow. Liz, do you have a poll you'd like to launch? All right. And she is launching that poll now. So we're interested to know, which of these new features would you be ready to try out when we are finished here? Which one's most interesting to you? Or maybe they're all interesting to you. All right, so we've got some great data coming in. So did you like the indicator level data capture, maybe the custom questions to set the environment? Of course, we love the domain and dimension summary notes and that automated piece. The reports is, those new observation reports are just beautiful. And then the double coding data capture. So lots of great feedback coming in. We've got about 67% of you have voted. We'll give it another about 10 seconds. So if you haven't voted yet, and let's put up those results. All right. So great, the summary notes. Look at that, Nikki.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lots of people are thinking that's going to be helpful.
Oh,
and the reports too. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the reports for sure. That's great. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share now. Close that poll, and we'll go back into our PowerPoint. All right, so now let's take a look at some helpful supports for our class observers, because we know how hard you're all working, and so we want to make sure that we are supporting you in the best way we can. So Nikki, I know you love Observer Resource Village, so I'm going to let you tell about that.
Sure, yes. So the Observer Village is a really great resource for class observers. Every certified class observer has access to this. So if you log into your TeachStone account and you go to your courses tile, you should see the Observer Village and your list of courses there. And it's just got a plethora of really great, helpful resources for you. There are papers, there are videos, there are podcasts, webinars, activities, you name it, just everything that you might want to know as an observer, all organized in one place. And it really just helps you to kind of stay in the know and up to date, and also keep your class content and coding skills sharp. And it's totally free and accessible to everybody.
I love that. And a great way to connect with your fellow observers, right? Especially in this virtual world where we can't always, connect in person. So I hope that you'll all check that out. One of my favorite places, of course, is the myTeachstone platform itself, and going into the TeachStone website. And if you head to the TeachStone website, what you'll find there are many places you can visit, but we actually have dedicated a landing page that is just filled with documents, reports, trainings that we're offering that really support this sort of world that we're living in right now during this pandemic. And so, I encourage you to go out there. If you haven't been to the TeachStone website in a while, it's just teachstone.com, but also visit the blog area. The blogs have wonderful documents, guidance documents. You can see some of the titles listed here that will really, support the work in the classroom and support some of the work that you're doing. And I love the blog in particular because I can subscribe to the blog. So down here at the bottom, you see in the red box, this is toward the bottom of the page where you kind of bypass all of the blogs. And of course, you're clicking around. It's like being in a great library. You can subscribe. And so you'll get the newest and latest updates from the blog itself, which lives on teachstone.com. So I hope you'll visit that as well.
Yeah. And I would add to Kim about those, just that, we're definitely in uncharted territory right now in terms of, socially distanced and virtual classroom settings. And so lots of observers are saying, how do I do this in these new, weird spaces? And so these guidance documents via the blog that Kim is mentioning are really kind of target those exact questions you're having. How do I observe in a virtual space? How do I observe in an in-person space where teachers and children are socially distanced? So just lots of really great kind of information at your fingertips with those documents.
Thanks. And we've got some links going into the chat box right now from Liz. So thank you, Liz. Appreciate that. And thank you for adding that, Nikki. And then let's go on to, I know, one of your favorite pieces, calibrations.
Yeah, so we often like to say that observing using the class is like learning a new language rather than learning how to ride a bike. So it really takes that ongoing practice. Practice makes perfect. So calibration just really provides you the opportunity to do that. So throughout the year, in between your annual recertification test, you can engage in calibration, where you can watch and code a video via the website. You can get immediate scoring feedback and also access to a recorded webinar where a class specialist talks through the master codes and the justifications for those codes for the video. And you can do this, as an individual. If you're an individual observer just wanting to, purchase calibration for yourself, you can do that. Or if you're an administrator and you have a group of observers that you'd like to engage in calibration, you can also purchase it at a group level as well.
Wonderful. Another great way to sort of manage your own professional development as an observer. That's wonderful. I love practice makes perfect. It's so true, isn't it?
Yes.
So as we wrap up here, our time together today, and we're so thankful that you've spent some of your lunchtime with us. Before we go through this slide, Liz, are there any questions that came in that you found to be pressing? I was trying to watch the monitor, but sometimes those things get away from me. You see anything?
There was just one that was in the actual Q&A box that Teresa asked, and I'm not sure has been addressed yet. If you want to take a moment with that one.
Okay, could you read that out loud? Just so.
Sure. Teresa says, essentially, this would not be used for a live observation. Yet you would come to myTeachstone, come to this location, and re-enter your notes to create the data, right? Almost like doing two reports, one live and then one transferring your information for data.
What do you think, Nikki?
Yes, I would say that's right, Teresa. So really, anytime you're conducting an observation, you're likely using paper and pencil, although it's totally acceptable to go right into the platform and enter the data as you're conducting the observation. So the platform is, mobile accessible. So some people do choose to do it that way or use our app. So there are many different ways that you might kind of do it. But if you did use paper and pencil, then this would just be that after step where you would go and kind of transfer that data to be captured in the database and, reported out on.
Right, just a little bit of way to clean it up and manage what you've I can see, I know that we have a lot of newer generation that is really used to taking notes, via a computer, and they're really, adept at working in forms and things like that. So they might find the paper pencil sort of, a little bit older style, but I do still go for the paper pencil myself, but I know that there are observers out there that might just choose to do this right on the computer as they are observing, or to look into the app. So thanks for that question. Anything else, Liz?
Nona just wrote, piggybacking on Margaret's question, do we anticipate possible confusion or pushback from teachers or admin when receiving the soft code data, since two observers might have the same soft codes and different scores or vice versa? My understanding that this was why we did not give indicator level data.
That's a really good question, Winona. I mean, I would say really the intent here is just to, provide the most useful data possible with providing the indicator level scores. So, if you think that your organization is going to find that additional data points helpful and you want to use that, especially if you want to use that automated, summary notes and feedback section, then I would say that that would be a helpful feature for you. But, it's totally optional. So there may be some organizations that say, we'd rather not use that feature because we feel like there could be some pushback. So, I think our goal is to kind of, like we mentioned earlier, give you more autonomy and flexibility with the data you're capturing, and allow you to capture, the data that you want to, but also opt not to capture data that, you don't think you need as well.
Great. I hope that answered your question, Winona. Great question. I'm sure it's on the minds of others.
That was it. All I see so far.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Appreciate it. So Nikki and I and our colleagues, our other Teachstone client success managers, which you see listed here on the side of the page, are going to be providing some myTeachstone webinars over the next few weeks and months. And so our next one that we are really excited to tell you about is coming October 1st at 12 p.m. Eastern. And here this is going to be for those in the administrator or coach role in myTeachstone, and you can see the title there. And so we hope that you'll join us for that, if that's so, or tell your colleagues about that one. We hope that we'll see you there. And then, if you're not certain who your client success manager is, or if you just really want more information, please feel free to reach out to Nikki and I, or any of the client success managers here at Teachstone, and we will help you, get you to the right space, partner with you. That's what we're here for. So if there aren't any other questions, I think we'll wrap up for today. Nikki, did you have anything to add?
I don't think so. I think we're just popping up one last poll just to gauge people's interest in additional information. So it says, which of the following topics would you be interested in receiving more information on? And so I think you can select multiples, but we just love to know, what your needs are, what you're wanting to know more about, just so we can, get the right information out to you.
Great. Wow, Nikki, it doesn't surprise me, conducting observations in a socially distant or virtual classroom setting.
Yes.
And you'll be happy to know when you visit the teachstone.com website and you look at those trainings, you will see we have a training that's actually called Conducting Observations in a Socially Distant or Virtual Classroom Setting. So we hope you'll take a look at that and see if that might be something that would be relevant to you and to your program or agency right now. All right. And that poll is closed now. All right, and it's pretty apparent, huh, Nikki?
Overwhelming, yes. I know that's at the top of everyone's minds. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
We know it's hard right now. It's just hard, and we acknowledge that, and we acknowledge all of the work and intentional and thoughtful things that you're doing every day out there to support the teachers and that support the children. So thank you so much from Teachstone. We appreciate you. Nikki, anything else?
I don't think so. I just echo Kim's thoughts. We so are in awe and appreciate everything that everyone out in the field is doing, and just don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything we can do at all to assist you. And this poll is super informative. We can pass this on internally that you're wanting more information on this, and so we'll get this out to you.
Great.
Yeah.
And don't forget to watch your email tomorrow for the reporting and some follow-up documents. And we hope to be speaking with many of you very soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.